Hello and greetings from Arizona. Thank you all for joining us today. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Chachkhiani from Fulton Teachers College at Arizona State University. Today, we have the third presentation in a series of presentations that is held as part of the USAID Educating the Future activity implemented by Chachkhiani International in partnership with Arizona State University, One World Network of Schools, and University of Georgia. The goal of the USAID Educating the Future activity is to, among others, to enhance the quality of teacher preparation and also education administration programs at selected Georgian universities. So for those of you who have attended our previous two presentations, you probably remember that we talked about such important aspects of ASU's teacher preparation programs as its structure, curriculum, assessment, instruction, also admission requirements and recruitment strategies. Then we also had an opportunity to explore how Arizona State University designs and implements field experiences and how it ensures that these experiences are aligned with the course requirements and overall program objectives. And today we have the chance to delve into the process of designing and obtaining accreditation for teacher preparation programs at ASU. And I am thrilled to introduce today's presenter, Dr. Carlyn Ludlow, who has been instrumental in leading these efforts at Fulton Teachers College. Dr. Ludlow is a clinical associate professor and the undergraduate program associate director at the Fulton Teachers College, Arizona State University. Throughout her career in education, Dr. Ludlow has held various roles, including classroom teacher, associate professor, program chair, assistant dean, and a consultant for schools, businesses, and government agencies. Her teaching interests encompass equity, diversity, multiculturalism, as well as exploring some historical, political, and ideological influences on today's education systems within the United States. And she's a twice honored university faculty member of the year and also a recipient of a University Distinguished Contribution Award. In addition, Dr. Ludlow has received recognition from district, state agencies, private corporations for her research, publications, and scholarly presentations. So before I hand over to Dr. Ludlow, here are some important housekeeping reminders, some of which I already touched in the very beginning. So depending on your language preference, you can choose to listen to the presentation in English, or you can click the globe button in the bottom right corner of the screen and switch to Georgian. I want to take this opportunity and thank our interpreter, Alexander, who is helping us with the translation, and he has done a great job, and I hope that it will be the same today. Our session is scheduled to run for an hour and a half. The presentation itself by Dr. Ludlow will take about an hour, and this will leave us with the 20-25 minutes for questions and answers. So please, if you have any questions, and I hope that you will, please send those questions in the chat. I and my colleagues from Georgia will be monitoring your questions and asking them on your behalf to Dr. Ludlow. I also want to inform you that we are recording today's session, and then it will be posted, and those who are not able to attend will be able to watch it. Lastly, also, I want to thank our team, Chachkhiani and the ASU team in Georgia, who have been helping for this webinar's online presentation to happen. Now, please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Ludlow as we begin the presentation. Carlyn, thank you once again for being with us today and for preparing a very interesting presentation. And now, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. It's very nice to see you all today. And I understand it is your evening there, and I appreciate you taking your time to be able to spend your evening with me. I am grateful for the opportunity to share with you about what we do at Arizona State University related to program design and accreditation. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we have designed our programs the last several years to be able to meet both state regulations and state certification guidelines. And then I will be excited to hear about what kind of questions you may have at the end. So let me start out by saying that here's just a fact that we know. Teachers matter more to student achievement than any other aspect in schooling. We know this. We know that teachers who are in the top 20% of performance generate 5 to 6 months more of student learning each year than those who are low performing teachers. We also know that quality teacher preparation correlates with higher student achievement. We understand that when we have quality teacher preparation, it has a greater impact than learning disabilities or poverty on student learning. Here is what we need. We need to ensure the highest quality teacher preparation, thereby ensuring high quality teachers. The better we prepare, the better our students are in their K-12 education. So it's our job to make sure that we can, when possible, be able to control as much of the student outcomes so that they can successfully navigate their way through the classroom and be highly effective educators. We believe in something that is called the 2 revolutions. This is a theory that says that in order to be able to shift from improvement to innovation, you have to have a system that will allow you to shift. You have to create systemic change, not just superficial change. So what I'm going to be discussing today is how we went from just improving our system to innovating our system by completely changing how we design our programs. First, I want to share with you a little bit about how our accreditation triad works. We have 3 prongs in our accreditation cycle. Our first is through the U.S. Department of Education. This regulates a lot of our policies and practices, a lot of our recruiting processes, and our financial aid. We have accreditation agencies at the federal level who look to regulate universities and colleges on how they do business. And then finally, we have our state and government agencies. And our state and government agencies are what I'm going to be focused on today. What we talk about is Educator Preparation Program Approval, or EPP approval, is our focus of the conversation and how we've designed our programs to make sure that we meet this program approval. In Arizona, we have an Arizona legislature, an Arizona State Board of Education, and an Arizona Department of Education, all of which enact laws and policies that govern how teacher preparation programs are approved. I want to first cover how we structure our types of teacher certificates. So I'm going to go through the list of the types of teaching certificates that we have. The first one is a standard teaching certificate. This is what most teachers are covered under. About 80% of our teachers are covered by a standard teaching certificate. We have alternative teaching certificates. Alternative teaching certificates are focused on people who have bachelor's degrees already in another content area and go back to school to get a master's degree or a post-baccalaureate certificate and are teaching at the same time in their classrooms while they're going to school. A third difference type of certificate we have is called a classroom-based teaching certificate. This certificate is very unique because it is provided by school districts, and school districts are allowed to accredit and train their teachers. And then we have a subject matter expert teaching certificate. This is a teaching certificate that is focused in 6th through 12th education, and is for people who have bachelor's degrees in other content areas, and then are getting a teaching certificate, or want to work in a secondary classroom with that subject area expertise. And then we have career and technical education teaching certificate as our 5th. And this is for people who have experience in the field and want to bring it into the classroom, typically in vocational areas. So we have in our repertoire, we have the 3 types. The first 3 types are provided by educator preparation programs. These educator preparation programs are accredited, have to be accredited, and provide the expertise in order to train in the standard teaching certificate, alternative teaching certificate, and classroom-based. We have, through our program at Arizona State University, 2 options. Our options are for students to obtain a standard teaching certificate or an alternative teaching certificate. The standard teaching certificate can be offered at both the bachelor's and the master's degree level, but at minimum, the bachelor's degree level. And the alternative teaching certificate is only offered at the master's degree level. The next one is our standard-based classroom certificate. This is offered through, as I said, the charter schools and school districts who provide the preparation in order for their teachers to be certified. Our next level is the subject matter expertise that requires the bachelor's degree. This is does not require any teacher preparation program and is specific to secondary subject areas. This is not a high regarded teaching certificate, and school districts don't like to hire teachers under this teaching certificate because they don't have the pedagogical knowledge and training. And then finally, as I said, the last one, this career and technical education does require work experience in an occupational or vocational area. So our standard teaching certificate and alternative certificate, these certificates are undergraduate, the standard certificate, are undergraduate and graduate level programs. And here are all of the different types that we offer at Arizona State University. We offer arts education, early childhood education, elementary education, middle grades education, physical education, special education, and then a number of secondary education programs. At the graduate level, we have less of those different subject areas because they are specifically for people who are in high needs areas and need to be certified prior to getting their teaching certificate. Those alternative teaching certificates tend to be in areas of elementary and special education. When we go through the teaching requirements, the certificate requirements in our state, we have 4 different things that students need to fulfill in order to obtain their teaching certificate. The first is a bachelor's degree program. They need to have a bachelor's degree at a minimum in order to be able to be certified. They need to have teacher preparation program coursework and field experiences, coursework in a variety of things that I'm going to talk about today, and then field experiences, which if you were at the last webinar was the focus of that one. We have state required testing, both in content and in pedagogy, that students are required to pass. And then we have a background check or a fingerprint clearance card that all of our students need to complete. So the teacher preparation and field work component is the focus for today. I'm going to show you an example of how our state sets out the requirements for an elementary education teaching certificate. This certificate covers grades kindergarten through 8th grade and includes 9 different components. And every teacher preparation program would have to show evidence of where each of these components are built into their program. It includes having instruction in research-based systematic phonics, including language and literacy development. It includes instruction in research-based instructional strategies for developing differentiated reading instruction, assessment, intervention, and remediation to support readers of varying ages and ability levels. Number 3 is developmentally appropriate instructional delivery and methodologies. Number 4 is we need to teach our instructional design and planning, including how our future teachers do modifications and accommodations to their students. We have to teach about the learning environment and classroom management. We have to teach how to assess, monitor, and report progress of students. We're required to teach our future teachers about how to teach students with exceptionalities and disabilities. We are required to have training in professional responsibility and ethical conduct. And finally, all of our future teachers are required to have a minimum of 12-week capstone experience in grades kindergarten through 8. And the capstone experience is what we talk about as student teaching, where it is with a mentor teacher in the classroom for an entire semester, learning how to be a teacher and eventually taking over the classroom on their own. The approval process for the educator approval, there are essentially 6 steps in the approval process. The very first step, if needed, is only for first-time educator preparation program applicants. So if your university or college had never been a provider before, this is only needed one time and one time only. It starts with what they call a readiness review. And the readiness review includes information about whether or not you are allowed by the federal government, the national government, to offer programs. You have to show that you're financially stable. You have to show that you have quality employment practices, that you have a setup of governance that is regulated and supported by your faculty. All of this is essentially a paperwork check to make sure that you're a university would not be here one day and gone the next day. Once step 1 is completed and an institution educator preparation program would pass step 1, then they move to step 2. And step 2 is where you would prepare all of the documents that are required for program approval. This is where we would prepare all of the information about where within our programs we would hit all of those 9 different criteria, plus be able to show where we have the national standards and the state academic standards met for teacher preparation. For first-time applicants, step number 3 requires an on-site visit. So there is a team that is comprised of volunteers from other educator preparation programs throughout the state and the country who go on site to do a review. The review team would evaluate program approval documents. If they are doing an on-site visit, they interview faculty, they interview students, they interview academic advisors and financial aid support to make sure that all of the support systems are in place for students to be successful. This review team, as I said, is a voluntary group and is considered as excellence in service for those who volunteer for these committees, because it does take quite a bit of work to be a reviewer for another institution's programs. Step number 5 is after this committee makes a recommendation to approve, to require recommendations and modifications, or to deny, Those are the three options. Assuming that a program is approved, the review team presents the program to the State Board of Education for their approval. The State Board of Education then, within a board meeting, approves a program, and all of our programs are approved for a total of 6 years before the process has to start over again. If you're doing a reapproval, steps number 1 and 3 are not needed again, but there will be a heavy emphasis on making sure that all of the documents are there to be able to support how the program should be aligned to state teacher preparation standards. The process that the review team looks for is they seek out evidence in 3 domains every 6 years in order for us to be able to write an institutional recommendation for a standard or alternative teaching certificate. That means that our university has the ability to say that students are qualified and we are approved to qualify them, so they can bypass a lot of the paperwork that is required by the Arizona Department of Education and go directly from us to the Department of Education to get their teaching certificate. We call that an institutional recommendation, which means we as an institution recommend them. This program approval process requires us to provide documentation and evidence in 3 different domains. Domain 1 is around organizational systems and structures. Domain 2 is educational impact. Domain 3 is clinical practice and partnerships. Here's what is included within Domain 1, organizational systems and structures. We are required to provide an overview of the program. We have to provide what are our admissions criteria. We need to provide that we have a statement of assurance that says that we will support and will continue to support students throughout their program. And should something happen and we need to close a program, we will allow students to finish, and we need a plan for how they would do that. And then we would have evaluation procedures and a monitoring plan. Essentially, how do we ensure over time that our programs are maintaining quality? Domain 2 includes an overview of how all of our programs align to our professional teaching standards. We have in our country professional standards that are required for all in-service teachers, so practicing K through 12 teachers, and those are called the in-task standards. Those in-task standards, we have to show how our programs meet these in-task standards. We have to provide a worksheet and a matrix, a chart essentially, that shows how all of this content knowledge is met. We have to show where our programs inform students about data literacy. How do they look at data, interpret data, to ensure that they can read assessments and be able to make instructional decisions based on those. And then finally, we have to show where technology integration is made throughout the program, where we teach students about how to navigate everything from using basic computer skills to artificial intelligence. All of these programs, all of our programs that we're seeking approval for, have to be aligned to the professional teaching standards, which is our in-task standards, technology standards, which are ISTE standards. Some of you may recognize ISTE standards. They're pretty international organization. And then we have something that are called Specialized Professional Association standards. These Specialized Professional Association standards are very technical and provide standards for specific certification areas. For example, CEC is one of them. CEC provides oversight around special education. We have another one called NCSS, which is the National Council for Social Studies, that provides oversight around social studies. There's one for science and math and teaching English. So we have to ensure that our programs are aligned to in-task standards, which are teacher preparation standards overall, ISTE standards, which are technology, and then all of these specialized professional association standards depending on the program. So it requires a lot of alignment from our faculty to be able to show where within our whole program students meet all of the expectations for this content. This right here is an image of this 10 standards that are included within in-task. These standards each have indicators that are underneath them. There are a total of 173 indicators that we map to ensure that all of the indicators are covered at both the introductory level and the mastery level within our programs. The same is true for ISTE standards. These are our technology standards. There are a total of 7 technology standards that we focus on, and those have indicators underneath them, although only 3 or 4 a piece, so it's much less mapping than it is with the in-task standards. Finally, domain 3. We have to provide evidence of where our students are doing their clinical practices, which includes internships within the field and their student teaching. We need to provide information about who are the partners that we work with. We have to provide information about how do we know when our students are ready for their capstone experience of student teaching. And what do we do if we have a student who runs into problems? We need a plan for them to be able to help to support them. Should they be not improving in their teaching practices? Should they be displaying unprofessional behavior? We have to have a remediation plan set out for how we work with students who struggle. So of all of these 3 domains, this is how we prepare to provide this evidence and documentation. The program design itself is developed by faculty leadership. There is a group of faculty leaders at the undergraduate and the graduate level who work on the design of the program, which I'll show you in just a minute. Once the design of the program is set out, actual specific course level design is done at the program area by department level faculty. Those faculty ensure that there are syllabi that are developed with appropriate alignment, that they include the correct content, and they develop out all of the assignments within a syllabus. And then our data collection system requires us, again, to have faculty level leadership, but also a data analyst who helps develop the infrastructure for us to be able to collect specific evidence. So of our 3 different components, program design, course design, and data collection, I'm going to cover all 6 of those separately. The first one is program design. One of our first and primary goals is to develop out program learning outcomes. What we did as an institution is we set out to develop program learning outcomes as a faculty group. As you can see in the images below, we got together for multiple weeks in person and sat with chart paper and post-it notes and discussed what is it that we think our graduates should be able to do? What do we think they should know? How do we ensure that they know? And had very deep and meaningful discussions about what we think is necessary for initial teacher preparation programs. The reason I say initial teacher preparation programs is because one of the things that we spent a lot of time discussing was what's our responsibility as a university to prepare initial or beginning teachers? And then how can we support school districts in continuing the preparation once they graduate through professional learning, through induction programs, because we cannot expect our graduates to be veteran teachers as soon as they come out. We can expect them to be successful novice teachers. So what is it we need to do to be able to prepare them to be successful novice educators? This process was very lengthy. We spent over a year going back and forth in drafts and discussing the program learning outcomes with faculty. We would work on it, send it to faculty for feedback. Work on it, send it to faculty for feedback. And this process took about a year for us to come up with what are the 3 domains of our program learning outcomes. We have the three domains in our program learning outcomes also have the program learning outcomes underneath them, and there are a total of 15 program learning outcomes. The 3 domains are education, design, and decision-making, professional growth, leadership, advocacy, and ethics, and then educator scholar. Within the first program learning outcome domain, there are 6 program learning outcomes. There are 5 program learning outcomes within the second domain and 4 program learning outcomes within the third educator scholar domain. And we always phrase this as, this is what we expect at the end of our program from each of our graduates. These are the program learning outcomes, and we have labeled them with numbers for us to be able to keep track of so that we know when we have a syllabus and assignments, what program learning outcome each of these is aligned to. After we had these program learning outcomes, we quickly noticed that they were very, very cumbersome and detailed, so much so that we felt it was necessary for us to break down the program learning outcomes into specific indicators. So for example, this program learning outcome right here, which is in the professional growth, leadership, advocacy, and ethics, states that students need to build and implement a professional growth plan using evidence and reflective practices in the areas of professional responsibility, educator identity, leadership, ethical conduct, and advocacy for equitable and inclusive practices. That is a lot of information in one program learning outcome. So we felt it was necessary for us to break down each of the program learning outcomes into progression indicators. So we said, what are the steps that students would need? What's the content students would need to be introduced to? What's the content that we would need to reinforce? And then finally, when do we know that a program learning outcome is mastered? So here is what one looks like when we break down a program learning outcome into progression indicators. Right here is what the program learning outcome is. And then these over on the right-hand side are all of the progression indicators at the introduced level, the reinforced level, and the mastery level. The program learning outcome itself says that we need for this one is our educational design and decision making. It is our program learning outcome number 4 under that domain, and the topic of it is assessment. It reads that our graduates of our programs are able to use multiple methods of assessment and data to evaluate learner strengths and needs, determine eligibility for services, monitor progress, guide educator decision-making, and actively engage with learners and stakeholders. So in order to do all of this very large program learning outcome, we needed to simplify it into more discrete concepts. So our first introductory level looks at, well, we need to teach students to identify methods or types of assessment. So once they have learned how to do that, then they can move on to the next one. They need to identify potential sources of data and how to access that data. So as you can see, as students are introduced to concepts, then those concepts are reinforced. And finally, at the end, those concepts are mastered at some point throughout a program. So after we had our program design, we spent a significant amount of time mapping what the program learning outcomes looked like within our model. So this is how our programs are designed. We have basically 6 different types of courses that are built to be able to address all of the program learning outcomes. Within the program design model, the 6 different types of courses are general studies courses. These are courses that are required by the university. They tend to include things like mathematics, science classes, history classes, philosophy classes, things that are general studies courses that are required by the university. Then we have our educator foundation courses, which are things that are foundational for students' knowledge. Our pedagogical core, our professional core, professional experiences in the field, and then elective courses. So our first 2 are the general studies, as I said, which is our requirements to fulfill different ASU general studies requirements. And then our educator foundations. The educator foundations courses are typically provided by students in their first 2 years of the program. And students are given information that would be foundational to anything they would need to know later. It includes things like child and adolescent development. It includes understanding the history of the field of education, the relevant policies and practices that govern all of education. So these educator foundation courses are taught to all students, no matter what program they enter into. We built up the program structure to be as building blocks with one another. So we started with these 2 types of courses and said, here is what it looks like in the first 2 years of a student's experience. Their first semester, they would take these courses. The green courses are the educator foundation courses, and the yellow courses are the required courses for the university, the general studies courses. Here's what they would take in their second semester, and then their third, and then their fourth. So finally, by the time they get to the first 2 years are completed, this is the coursework that they will have had. The next layer that we developed was our pedagogical core courses. These courses are the ones that address general pedagogical knowledge and skills across all professional areas and really focus on our in-task standards, our in-task professional standards. These courses are meant for all students across programs, but do have some content that is specific to a certification area as necessary. Here's how we developed the pedagogical core. We looked at our primary content areas and we said, for all of the areas that we provide preparation in, what are the things that they all have in common? What are the things that all students need to be able to learn? If they're in secondary or middle grades or special education, what's the content that they would have to learn? And we did that by mapping it out on a document where we basically put out all of the certification areas and then listed, here are the topics that we are required by state law to cover. If you remember, I gave you the list of the 9 things that every university has to provide for a student to be certified, we charted this out and said, here's what everybody needs to know. And based on this information, then we were able to say, well, everybody needs to know about this topic, lesson planning, or about this topic, learning environment. And we created courses that would focus on those topics, the things that they all have in common, and we call this our pedagogical core. Those courses map on and look like this, all of the courses in blue. So after we have our educator foundations and our pedagogical core and our general studies, our next focus is looking at our professional core and our professional experiences. The professional core courses are taken by students in specific program areas or grade level bands. So it focuses on content that you would need to know if you want to teach at the early childhood level, or at the secondary level in mathematics, or at the elementary level. So they're content that is very specific to the certification area. And then we also mapped on what are the professional experiences that students should have that coincide with that professional core. Pardon me. This you will see is our next layer of classes. So we started adding those in and said, here is how we think students should sequence those classes to make sure that they have covered all the professional core and the professional experiences that we feel are important for students to have. Our last layer of how we built our programs are about our specialization and elective areas. The elective areas are ones that students can choose from and include things that they can either get a minor in or have some other level of expertise as an elective offering. So all of our programs are built with this same structure. What is different within one program to another is what these professional core courses look like, and what their specializations look like, and what their professional experiences include. But all of the courses in green, yellow, and blue, every student takes regardless of what type of program they're in. This allows us to be able to ensure that we never have to cancel courses because we don't have enough students in them, because we have critical mass that we've gathered across program areas. After we designed the program, the model itself, that's when we went to faculty and said, now we need you to develop out the courses that make sense within them. That included writing course descriptions, writing course objectives. And in order to guide this process, we developed for our faculty exemplars of syllabi. So it had us showing our faculty, here's what we want to make sure they pay attention to in order to develop out syllabi that have all of the components we need. So every single faculty member was provided this exemplary syllabus to review. One of the things that we had everyone focus on was this chart right here called student learning outcomes. The student learning outcomes are what students are expected to be able to know and do by the end of the course. And we had our faculty write out the student learning outcomes, but also align those student learning outcomes to our program level indicators, to our in-task standards, our ISTE standards, and then should we have any professional specialization certification areas like CEC. So here's what one would look like in a syllabus. This is an example from the syllabus that focuses on assessment, and it has in it the alignment of all of the student learning outcomes Here are the program learning outcomes that each of the students will achieve. Here's the in-task standards that every student will learn, the ISTE standards, and then the specialized standards, which for this one is the CEC standards, which stands for Council for Exceptional Children. So once we had all of the syllabi mapped to the student learning outcomes and the program standards, then what we did was to create course assignments that would be aligned to those. How do we measure whether or not that student learning outcome was mastered by a student? And here's what this looks like. We had each faculty develop out assignments and descriptions within their syllabus of an assignment, what it would look like, the student learning outcomes that it would be aligned to, the program learning outcomes, and then detailed things that students would need to know, like what day does it do and how many points is it worth. One of the things that we have emphasized our faculty to do, and some faculty have found it very useful in writing assignments, is putting out within every assignment, what is the task that students need to accomplish? What's the reason why or the purpose in that assignment? How are the students being evaluated, and how are they submitting or turning in that assignment? We found when we started doing this and recommending that faculty write out assignments this way, that it allowed faculty to really start to understand the purpose of why they're assigning certain things. We had faculty who would say things like, well, I never really thought about why I had decided to assign such an assignment. But after we said, well, let's think about what's the reason. Is it just because you want them to write a paper, or what's the real purpose in making sure that you have an assignment that aligns to what the learning outcomes of the course are? So this has been a helpful tool, especially for some of our newer faculty members. An additional thing that we did was we required every course to have what we call 2 common assessments. Those common assessments are indicated by a little asterisk and a note to students that say that these assignments are used for program evaluation and cannot be changed by a faculty member. These common assessments are directly aligned with our program learning outcomes and standards, and create consistency across instructors, across modalities, and ensure that over time, we can measure whether or not we're doing a good job at teaching program learning outcomes. And we use this content of the common assessments, the data of common assessments, for our continuous improvement, but also for our continued accreditation processes. Some of you may ask questions around, well, what about faculty's academic freedom? Because that's a conversation I'm not sure if you have often, but we have often, around what is the level of freedom that faculty have to be able to choose what's in their course. So a few years ago in 2022, we had a bylaw change within our faculty bylaws. And here's what it says. It says faculty members have academic freedom when teaching a course subject to the course description that's contained within the catalog. In approved professional or state certification programs, the course syllabi are developed by responsible faculty, and core elements must remain as elements of the course. Meaning, you can be very creative on how you teach content, but you cannot be creative on what you teach within that content. And the common assessments are one of those things that you cannot be creative with. You don't have academic freedom to be able to change those, because these are the things that we have told the state of Arizona that we will teach. So one of the very important infrastructure changes that we made was to be able to collect all of this information in a database. We needed a way to store information like all of our program maps, where every single program learning outcome was being introduced, reinforced, and mastered to all of our courses. And how do we collect this information within a systemized way? So what we did was we set out and we created this course alignment database. And it is essentially an Airtable database where every faculty member would input, these are the student learning outcomes for my course. Here are the alignment of the INTAS standards. Here is the alignment of our program learning outcomes. So that then we had charts that could capture all of this information. So if somebody came to us and said, tell me where INTAS Standard 1 is being covered, we could go to INTAS Standard 1 and look and say, well, it's being covered in all of these courses at either the introduced or reinforced level, and it is being covered at the mastery level in all of these courses, so that we have this information easily accessible for us. This allowed us to be able to create what we call heat maps. Here's an example of a heat map that we developed for our one of our programs, our elementary ed program. And it says on here, in the light pink are every time something is introduced to a student. In the darker pink, it shows where something is reinforced, and then the very dark colors are where it is mastered. The timeline of a student's coursework starts in term 1 and goes through term 8. So basically their first semester with us to their 8th semester with us, their senior year. And as you can see within this program, we know these are the areas that students are introduced to things, all the way down to where the dark pink shows, here's where things are mastered. It is good that you see darker colors on the bottom. But this mapping also allows us to be able to see where are some areas that we have gaps or things we need to improve upon. For example, if you look right here at this program learning outcome, which is design and decision-making standard number 6, you'll see that we have this very strange indication right in the middle of this dark color. And this dark color would indicate that it's a mastery level, but yet that's done in term 5, so in junior year. And then it's introduced or reinforced again in senior year. That doesn't make any sense. You would want the progression to show lighter to darker. So it doesn't mean that we would necessarily make changes, but it means we would go in and investigate. We would investigate why that happened. Well, as it turns out, this course is focused on students mastering content, and it is appropriate that they're introduced to the mastery of that content, but they apply it later at an introductory level in a different course. But these heat maps, these curriculum heat maps, allow us to show in a visual way where every one of our program learning outcomes are introduced, reinforced, and mastered, as well as where our standards, our INTASC and ISTE standards are as well. So the last thing that we needed to do was to have a central place or repository for all of our faculty to view this information that was accessible to everyone, that was easy to interpret. What we did was we created what is called a curriculum hub. And this hub is a website that was created where all kinds of information is stored for faculty. A copy of every syllabus is on the curriculum hub. A copy of all of the heat maps are on the curriculum hubs. So are the program learning outcomes and all of the data that we would need to be able to provide evidence to the state of Arizona during our accreditation process. So the curriculum hub has become a centralized repository for us to be able to collect information and then to use for accreditation and program improvement. How we collect information on the student level is we went through a process of, as I shared with you earlier, using all of our program learning outcomes and breaking them down into discrete progression indicators. We added what we call hashtags to each of these program learning outcomes so that within a course, you could have a rubric that is aligned to the program learning outcome and the hashtag, which allows us to pull data around a program learning outcome across courses. Similar to how hashtags are used with social media, where if you would hashtag something, it allows you to search for a topic based on this hashtag. So every course that has a hashtag assigned to it in a progression indicator of a program learning outcome can be pulled for data. And it allows us to see across courses how well our students are performing for every program learning outcome. So this has been very useful for us to be able to determine how well our students are learning program learning outcomes across time and across programs and across modalities. Finally, one of the things that we did that was very useful was to create what we call our course fact sheets. We created a course fact sheet for every single class, and it has in it information such as here's what the student's journey looks like, and here's where this course fits within a student's journey. So this particular course is taught usually in term 4, which is second semester, sophomore year. So you can see that these are the courses that students would take, and here's where this course fits. Here are the primary program learning outcomes that are addressed. And then we have, well, here's what the students should have learned before they come to you in this course. Here's the focus of this course. And then here's what students will need to know leaving your course. Here's what they'll learn after your course is over. This allows faculty who teach specific courses to understand where their course is situated within a program design. It is very useful for faculty that we have that are part-time, who come into us and teach a course once every year or once every couple of years. It allows them to still understand why their content is important and how to know what students know coming in to their course and what they need to teach them before they exit. So all of this information that we've covered around Domain 1, the organizational systems and structures, Domain 2, the instructional impact, and Domain 3, the clinical practice and partnership. This is the information that we submit to the state in order to be approved for our program accreditation that lasts for 6 years. The program design and the data collection is instrumental in us being able to get approval and to seek reapproval every 6 years. So that was a lot of information very quickly, but I am happy to answer any questions that may come up. I'll stop sharing, Kitty.
Carlyn, yeah, thank you so much. This was so interesting and amazing that in only 15 minutes or so you managed to cover very important topics, and I'm sure that our representatives from Georgian universities found it very interesting. It was for me and for the participants, really judging from the questions they have, interesting to see how well structured the process of program design is, and you ensure the alignment of each course and the assignments under the courses with the program learning outcomes. And probably one of the interesting things I heard was also how the emphasis you make on the process of developing this program learning outcomes and working with the faculty and ensuring that you get their input, and this is something which is shared and understood by the faculty and the length of the process, but it's definitely worth of it because it's really the foundation of everything. Another interesting thing, which I'm sure also resonated with our faculty in Georgia, is how you reconcile this academic freedom and also the need for consistency and alignment. So I think that there is a lot for Georgia to learn from your experience and see how it may fit also the Georgian context. Thank you so much. And we have several questions here, and I'll try to ask those. So let me start with the clarifying question, which I think was from Lela Turmanidze from Batumi State University. So Lela is asking about content knowledge metrics and worksheets, which you mentioned when you talked about the second domain. So could you please explain more about these documents, what exactly they are, and what is the information that is represented in that?
Yes. So the content knowledge matrix are the professional specialized association standards like CEC or the Council for Exceptional Children or NCSS, the National Council for Social Studies. All of the specialized professional associations have standards that are listed out, and we're required to show within our program areas where those standards are also introduced, reinforced, and mastered for those standards. So the content area matrix are based on those standards. So it would be if you are looking at a secondary teacher in mathematics, those content area matrix would be based on NCTM, which is our National Council for Teachers of Mathematics. And those standards would be what we'd be required to be able to show where our students are introduced to each of those mathematical practices and where they're reinforced and mastered. So it looks, and I'm happy to share an example if you want to see it, but it looks like a matrix where we write down, here is what the assignment is, here's the course that it's in, and here's where here's what mastery would look like for a student.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you very much. Another question we have is from Lasha Chachkhiani. So Lasha had a question about tracking, the graduates and following them after they graduate and the progress. So how do you collect information about them? How do you know how successful they are in teaching profession? And then how do you use this information for improving the quality of your programs?
That's a great question. So we try. We are not perfect at it. Here's what happens when our teachers, when our graduates come out and they obtain their teaching certificate, they are given an educator ID number. And that educator ID number is attached to their teaching certificate. When they go to get a job, every school district is required to put into a database the teacher's educator ID numbers, which allow us to be able to go back and pull where every educator is over time. So we could see if an educator went from one school district to another or stopped working for a little bit, came back, we can tell through their educator ID number. The process is not flawless though, for a few reasons. One is that the districts are supposed to enter the educator ID numbers. They don't have to. They're encouraged to, they're reminded about it often, but there are times when they don't. And if they don't enter that information, we don't know where those teachers end up working. The other part is that the educator ID number it's up to our graduates to tell us what their educator ID number is, because once they graduate, that teaching certificate is on their own and it doesn't involve us. So we try to collect those educator ID numbers and we try to track them over time. I would say we do a decent job at that, but it is certainly not flawless. One of the things that we do look at internally, we have reports that we have to send to our provost and president's office at Arizona State University every year about program continuous improvement. And we do look at how many of our teachers end up in the field. What are reasons why they would be leaving? We do some investigation around that to the degree that we can. But getting in touch with alumni is hard. Keeping in touch with alumni is harder. So it's not a flawless system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. Very interesting. Another question is about the review teams and their on-site visits. So first of all, if you could please tell us more about how this members of the review teams are selected. You mentioned that these are volunteers and representatives from educational institutions, and that also this is considered as an excellence work and contribution. And yeah, so, but who exactly decides and how those people who are willing to serve on these teams are selected? And then also, if you could tell us more about how their on-site visit looks like. You mentioned how you're providing the evidence for each domain, but what does exactly happen? With whom do they talk? What they see, what places, sites on campus they visit? If you can please explain this. This was the question from our team member, Natia Shavanadze. Thank you.
Of course. So the review team, so let me state this. The Arizona Department of Education, which I would say is probably similar to a Ministry of Education for you, they have responsibility in enacting and making sure that every teacher preparation program follows rules and policies and laws. They are an organization that helps oversee approval process. The Arizona Department of Education is not the approvers. They're the ones that help support the process of approval. So they seek out volunteers. They send out an all-call message to professors of education across the state and sometimes country and look for volunteers. The volunteers have an application that they fill out and they submit this application that describes their experience in higher education, their experience in teacher education, their experience in program development, and then they submit their CV or resume with it. The Arizona Department of Education looks through all of the volunteers and selects the appropriate review team for the institution and the program. Meaning, if you have a program that is focused very specialized on something like visually impaired students, you would want people who are part of the review team who would understand what it's like to teach visually impaired students so that they can ask the right questions. The review teams are usually comprised of about 5 to 6 professors of education. And the site visits typically last 2 days. They would plan ahead so that their whole day is structured. They would meet with the program chairs or department chairs. They would attend a class. They would have focus groups with students. They would have focus groups with faculty. They would meet with the faculty in the departments that they're seeking approval in. And it's basically 2 days of sitting in classes and meetings to be able to learn as much as possible about the program. And then that review team would go back to their offices, their own institutions, and start reviewing all the documents. That review team is the site visit is only necessary for the very first time you're seeking approval. After that, the site visit isn't necessary. The paperwork review is what's necessary. So the the process for finding the volunteers, because it is a labor intensive process, there tends not to be a lot of people who are interested in this. So you do have reviewers that are used multiple times. So I've reviewed many programs over the last number of years, because I happen to like this process and think it's important. But some of my colleagues don't. So being able to find volunteers who find the process worthwhile is important.
Thank you so much. Another question here we have from Tamar Chachkhiani from Caucasus University. So Tamar wanted to learn more about the specialization and elective courses. What types of courses, if you can tell us more, these are, and how you ensure that they respond to student needs, and also this existing challenges in general in the educational system in relation to instruction. Thanks.
That's a very good question. So we have 18 different specialization areas students can select from, or they can create their own. We set up the first 18 based on faculty input and said, what do you think that students would be interested in specializing in? And they gave us lots of different ideas around counseling, around middle grades mathematics for people who are elementary school teachers, or physical education coaching. So we have 18 of these special interest areas that we have set out with. Here are the courses that we recommend students to take. Sometimes students come to us with an interest in something we hadn't even considered, or didn't have documented. In those cases, they work with their advisor and maybe a faculty member to set up the coursework that they want to include in their own personalized interest area. We have some students who've done that. I will say our most popular interest area has been counseling. We have found that a lot of our future teachers have appreciated learning more about trauma-informed care, learning about how to help identify students who have highly volatile personal circumstances and how to refer them for support. That's been a very popular interest area.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful. Carlyn, I know that the main topic of our presentation today is not field experiences, and we did have another presentation about this, but this is a very interesting topic for the Georgian audience. So we have two participants now, Marek Nicoladze from Kutaisi State University and Nodar Mirzanashvili from Gori State University, who want to know and learn more about how these field experiences are structured. If you can give us some general overview, and then also how the schools and teachers with whom you partner for these field experiences are selected. We have another 10 minutes, so maybe we can use this time.
Sure. Okay, so we start our field experiences with our students in their sophomore year. They start with us in third semester, so sophomore year, where the students do 20 hours within a semester in the field. It is not that many hours. They are just barely dipping their toe into what field experience is like. They do those 20 hours looking for and observing and doing some small group instruction around general classroom practices. How does an educator manage? How do they plan? Very general, broad things. They do 20 hours of field experience work in both semesters 3 and 4. When they get to semesters 5 and 6, they do 45 hours in the field. That works out to be about 4 hours a week. In term 7, which is first semester senior year, they do 75 hours in the field. That's about 1 full day. in the field. And then their last semester, they do full student teaching, which is 5 days a week for the whole semester. How do we select our mentors? Right now, we work with the school districts. We work with their Office of Human Resources. We also work with the principals. Every one of our mentors is required to have the approval of their principal in order to be a mentor. We have requirements for the mentors that they have to have been teaching for 3 years. They have to be certified in the same area in which the candidate in our pre-service teacher is seeking certification. And they have to be highly qualified and have good reviews from their principal. So we rely a lot on principals to identify mentors that they think are good quality. We know that the mentor part is the most important piece in any field experience, particularly in student teaching. The better the mentor, the better the student teaching experience, the better prepared the teacher will be. So we really do value the relationships that we have with our principals, and in them being very open and honest with us about who would be good mentors. We do evaluations at the end of the semester from the student teachers and interns themselves about the quality of their mentor, to make sure that this is somebody that we should use again, that this is somebody who did a good job in mentoring them. So we also keep a database of mentors that we can pick from year after year.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Here we have another question and 8 minutes left, so we can this time from Ekameladze from Georgia National University. This is a question about digital tools and online platforms. If you like, what are some of the main tools you use, your faculty uses during the instruction? I know it's a broad question, but maybe briefly, yeah.
So we have our undergraduate programs. We have some online courses for our undergraduate programs. Probably about 1/4 or 1/3 of our courses can be taken in a totally online asynchronous format. The digital tools that we use, our learning management system is Canvas. That's what we use for all of our courses. We use things like Yellow Dig quite a bit, which is a tool that provides feedback for students around reflections and posts that they would make. We have been encouraging our faculty to take a variety of seminars around AI and artificial intelligence to see how we can help, how artificial intelligence can help their work. Our graduate level programs, which I don't oversee, I do just undergraduate, they are all online, and they are provided for students internationally, nationally. And they would have a much better idea of the digital tools that they use. It's not my area of expertise, so I just shared with you a few, but there's many, many more that I'm sure if you would like, I can get you in touch with my colleague who does my job at the graduate level.
Yeah, that would be great. And also, just to let our participants know, we have, together with Carlyn, we have also planned another presentation where we will be able to talk about the educational technologies at ASU. So yeah, please watch our announcements, and I hope that you'll find that also very useful. So let me try to look at the questions and make sure that we're not missing anything. So yeah, I think that we covered all the questions. I just read a lot of feedback here from our participants think that this is very interesting, and also they would like to have a workshop, maybe, you know, and capacity building support in how to build those maps and how to ensure and create the instruments for assessing the learning outcomes. And I hope that, you know, they will definitely have that opportunity. Yeah, I think we have all the questions. Okay, I think there is another one. Okay, if the PowerPoint presentation will be shared, the question, yeah, we will be able to share the information. The recordings also will be shared, and you will have opportunity to listen to Carlyn's presentation. Okay, yeah, I think we have all the questions covered. Carlyn, thank you so much. This was really interesting on behalf of all the attendees here, of our team, Chemonics and ASU in Georgia. Let me thank you for your time, and I do hope that our representatives from Georgian universities will have more opportunities to work with you and your team members.